bet you just love to get rid of, I know I would, endless streams of useless laws. And I don't just mean useless laws in like federal government, Congress, whatever. No. We're heading all the way down to the local level, as in your town hall. And for that, we go now to visit Boyd Wingham of Wyoming Liberty Group. How have you been, sir?
We are doing excellent down here. And you?
Okay, very good. Like you have dug out successfully from all the global warming that piled up on our streets over the past couple of days. So we're good.
Yeah, for the most part. It's still a little bit sloshy, but I'll tell you what, this is the kind of day for working outside.
It's nice out there. And now let me explain something to my sister who's listening in Florida. It can be 17 degrees outside, but if it's full blue sky and sunny, boy, you can walk around in just your shirt, not even a jacket. You get used to it after a while, I've noticed. So you wrote a series of really interesting articles, Boyd, that have to do with local government mostly, and just the list after list after list of useless laws that local governments have. And I guess you're offering solutions on how to get rid of them?
Yes, and it's a pretty straightforward, simple solution. Ever since I started elementary school, I've always had to have an eraser handy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, down here in Cheyenne, there's an effort underway to just repeal all the bicycle regulation, bicycle registration laws.
Well, hold on. Wait. Stop right there. Just a second. Hold on. In Cheyenne, if I were to live in Cheyenne, like, for example, your good friend and mine, I love the woman to death. And she works, I guess, right down the hallway, Maureen Bader.
More around the corner, yeah.
Okay, loves to ride her bike. I mean, she is a serious bike lady. She gets out there and does more miles on her bike than you and I might drive in our car in a week. So she's very serious about it. Did she have to register her bike?
According to the ordinance that's on the book here in Cheyenne, yes.
Wow. Now, here's the second question. And if we get her in trouble, it's all on you. So, because you don't have to answer the question. So did she register her bike?
I don't know.
Okay, good. Good answer. Okay. So I want to explore that for just a minute. You have to register your bike. Why?
Because the law says so. Once upon a time, as this is the research that the police department here dug up, about 1937, kind of, in the run-up to World War II, some folks decided that there were too many bicycles getting stolen. So their brilliant solution was to require all bicycle owners to register their bicycle and get a registration plate and affix it to the bicycle, basically a license plate for a car.
Right.
And at the time, when you go to register your bicycle, it'd have to go through a safety inspection, and the police decide if it was safe enough for you to ride before they'd issue this, basically a license plate, a registration plate for your bicycle, before you were allowed to ride it on any street or any path designated or devoted to the use of bicycles.
Was anyone ever pulled over, Boyd, for not having a license plate?
Not recently, and the local police chief is pretty adamant that he doesn't intend to do so and doesn't even want to have that hanging over his department's head.
You see, what I've always said, because I've heard about other towns that are even offering to do that now. I mean, they think this is a new idea. They want to do it now. And so my thought was, look, if you're worried about your bike being stolen, don't add another level of bureaucracy to your city. Okay, there's fees and people can get pulled over and fined, or don't pay the fine, they're arrested. Just do this. Once you purchase your bike, there's several places on your bicycle where there are serial numbers. Write them down, take some pictures of your bike, seal it in a nice little Ziploc bag, and if your bike is ever stolen, bring that information to the police, because isn't that just as effective as having a registration system by law?
According to the local police chief, it's more effective.
Okay. There you go. All right. So you're suggesting, and I know this is a difficult thing for some people in government to conceive of, but since the law has been found just to be completely useless, and for that matter, annoying, then get rid of it? Are you crazy, Boyd?
Well, I'm not the only one that thinks that way. There's a handful of folks on the city council that have proposed a local ordinance and to amend it. And if you read amend the law, and if you take a look at the ordinance, it's simply taking a line and striking out just about every last word in the entire ordinance.
Right.
And yeah, it's a simple solution, and it's trying to work its way through the city council down here. Believe it or not, there has not been unanimous support for the idea of simply getting rid of an outdated, onerous law that the police do not even want to try to enforce and do not intend to enforce.
Yeah.
And nobody follows anyway. According to the police, in the last year, there was all of exactly one person that showed up on their doorstep but wanted to register their bicycle.
Okay, so I'm going to go out on a limb here on this one, Boyd. I would bet if you went to the local bicycle shops or any other shop that sold bicycles, like a Walmart or whatever, any retail outlet that sold bicycles, and let's add to that Craigslist and yard sales, and you found out how many bicycles were purchased or sold, whichever way you want to do it, in Cheyenne, Wyoming in the past year, I bet you that number is more than one.
I'm betting so.
Okay. Well, there's the answer to that question. So it actually is a bit of a fight to get rid of something as simple as that?
It seems to be, and this kind of gives you an insight, gives folks an insight, or it gives people an insight into how people in government can sometimes think, and why it is so critical to keep your local elected officials on a tight leash. Nobody here is arguing that registering a bicycle and getting a license plate to put on your bike with the police is the best way to deal with bicycle thefts in the city. However, there are one or two or three people on the city council who have convinced themselves that they can somehow reinvigorate this registration ordinance and use it to kind of compel people or get people to be nicer about how they ride bicycles and drive around town. Maybe do kind of a bicycle riding test like we do with, when you go get your license, your driver's license, and bicycle safety tests.
Okay,
is one of the ideas out there to try to keep it in place.
When I was a kid, my bicycle safety test, when I fell off my bike and skinned my knee, that taught me not to do that maneuver anymore. See, that's a bicycle safety test to me.
Yes, that's a lesson and a test and an assessment all rolled into one.
All right. Well, a little more serious note here, because because this is a perfect illustration of what your articles have been about. I have a theory, Boyd. How often does the Cheyenne, Wyoming City Council meet?
Twice a week.
And there's the problem.
Pardon me, twice a month.
Twice a month.
Every other week.
Still, and that's a lot less than most. Now, that's official meetings. Do they have other meetings besides in front of the, with a full council meeting and with an audience and all of that? Or do they have other meetings that, are not necessarily open to the public?
Well, of course, we have open meetings laws that apply to all of local government around Wyoming. Okay. And if you find somebody that's having a meeting and casting votes and making decisions that are not open to the public, we've got a problem. But they've got their standing committee meetings.
That's what I'm talking. Committees and stuff
they
like
meet
that,
on the alternate weeks, and they're open to the public.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm saying this is I've come up with a theory, and this is part of the theory as to why in the state of Wyoming, which the state government of Wyoming is out of control enough as it is. In the state of Wyoming, they meet once a year, and 1 year is a legislative session and the other year is a budget session, and they meet for just a short period of time, about a month-ish, and then that's it, and the legislative body is out of there, and they're not supposed to be writing any more legislation, and that cuts down on the number of stupid laws that can be passed on a given period of time. Unfortunately, though, we don't have the same kind of rules set in place for cities across America. So if your city council is meeting twice a week in their big open meetings, and then there's all sorts of other committee meetings on the side, Well, then all they're doing is writing one stupid rule after the next. So here's what I propose, Boyd. Every city in Wyoming can have 2 meetings a year. One is in the wintertime, one is in the summertime, because obviously in the wintertime you can have some different problems because of winter than you would have in the summertime, right? And the whole point is to meet to take care of basic issues and vote on a few things. And then they're done. That's it. And maybe maybe they meet over a 1 or 2 day period. If they're not getting together and meeting, then they don't have the opportunity to write all of these idiotic local ordinances.
There's probably some soundness to that theory. Yeah. But I think our state legislature also is evidence that even if you keep them to a pretty short timeline, there's still abundant opportunity for mischief. Sometimes they do stupid stuff instead of doing the stuff they're supposed to be doing.
Sometimes? Okay, well, that's a whole nother discussion, isn't it?
Yes.
But the bicycle thing was a perfect illustration. What else would you like to take an erasure to?
Well, I'm a land use lawyer. I follow property rights, private property rights fairly closely. But, there's entire sections of the zoning code that, as far as I'm concerned, could disappear tomorrow and it wouldn't be soon enough. And, at a local government level, that's a big chunk of what they do over the course of the year is property development permitting and property development regulation.
Right.
And so that's a fertile ground to look. And if you comb through Code of City ordinances, there's a whole host of other things that could disappear. They recently, down here in Cheyenne, adopted an ordinance for licensing and permitting door-to-door sales people, where they have to go register and get a permit to go knock on people's doors and try to sell things. As annoying as that is, I still have the ability, the absolute right to close my door, and that's an example of something that people wanted, but it wasn't necessary. And you can work your way through this list. Here's something to think about, though. This bicycle ordinance, I used the example of Cheyenne because Cheyenne, it has come up as a current topic, and Cheyenne is trying to repeal the bicycle registration laws locally. Right. But even there in Gillette, there's bicycle registration laws in place. And I'm not aware of the city of Gillette trying to.
Are they actually trying to enforce them? Because I've never seen a license plate on a bike around here.
I don't know, and it may be yet another example of, much like Cheyenne, where there's this registration and inspection and fee imposition regime in place that everybody just kind of ignores, but it's still sitting there on the books, and somebody could still get in trouble if they, with the police, if some policemen decided to try to enforce it, even if it's not enforced.
Okay, I'm talking with Boyd Wiggum from Wyoming Liberty Group. Up next, Boyd, I want to ask you about, first off, where, and it really is amusing, because this is going to be the fun part of the conversation for me, where they find a lot of these ridiculous ordinances in the first place at your city level, because they're not just making them up on their own. These things are being offered to them, and they end up passing them. Boyd, a lot of times people ask, and I've asked the question myself, how do people at City Hall dream up these things? Because some of them are just so stupid, but really out there idiotic, but they don't dream them up on their own, do they? They get them from somewhere.
Well, sometimes I think they do dream them up. Somebody does. But by and large, what I've seen as I listen to local government leaders, even in academia, but now here in Cheyenne, is there's a lot of mimicry that happens, a lot of copying somebody else. For example, down here in Cheyenne, our local powers that be look with a great deal of envy south of Cheyenne to the Colorado Front Range. And, it is a robust, quickly growing, vibrant area, but it's heavily regulated. There's a lot of government micromanagement of how people live, work, invest, and build down there. But you see a lot of things that in the local discussion that are basically a replica of something that's happening in Fort Collins or Boulder or someplace else. And I expect you probably see the same thing up there in Gillette. I'll ask you a question.
Right.
When policies come up, does Gillette point to examples such as what's going on in Casper or
Yes.
Rapid City or Spearfish or Billings?
Yeah. Oh, they love, in fact, there seems to be a bit of mutual envy between Casper and Gillette, like a rivalry. And they're always trying to one-up each other on different laws, rules, and regulations. Well, that's the way Casper does it. So we should do it that way because we can't fall behind Casper, you know.
It's a little bit like lemmings trying to race each other to the edge of the cliff.
Right, yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
So, and we have that down here. Sometimes we point to Gillette or Casper or Laramie, for example, but quite often it's communities out of state that are closer to Cheyenne than Laramie is, and so you see a lot of ideas come from there, and sometimes they get a tweak, sometimes they don't, but that's where things come from. It's just modeling after somebody else's ordinance. And
Okay.
admittedly, I do research the same way.
Yeah.
But it can work for good, too. For example, may I suggest that if Cheyenne can repeal its bicycle registration ordinance, perhaps Gillette could look at the Cheyenne example and follow suit. There's good examples. City of Houston has never adopted a land use zoning ordinance.
Right.
So you can follow an example that way, too. But that's where a lot of stuff comes from.
Right. So in the short, we got about a minute to go here. So how do you convince, if you're just an average citizen, because I know this is part of what you do for a living, especially with land, how does the average citizen just show up and convince city council to get rid of a lot of this nonsense?
Well, if local government is really closest to the people, then the people who, the lawmakers at the local level, city council, county commissioners, should be somebody that residents know, have met, have seen in the store, and just send an email, make a telephone call, talk to somebody in the street or in the store. A good city council person is willing to meet you for coffee if you say, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about this. When's a good time for you?" And then the other thing is we were just talking about copying somebody else. Sometimes it's really helpful to take an example of what somebody else has done. In this case, the city of Cheyenne simply repealing the bicycle registration.
Okay,
and
real quick, where do people find your work, Boyd? Because you've written extensively about this.
Yes, I am at www.yliberty.org. That's the postal abbreviation yliberty.org. And you can also find me on Twitter and Facebook for Wyoming Liberty or BWIGM.
All right. Thank you, Boyd.
Okay, thank you, Glenn.